I am a cartographer. I spend my days in the world of certainty, translating the disorder of the real world into the orderly language of lines, elevations, and coordinates. A map, to me, is a promise that the world is knowable, that every hill, river, and road can be documented, pinned down, and understood. A map is the truth. That is why my son's map nearly destroyed me. Because the place he drew did not exist on any chart, any satellite, or in any known record. His place was impossible. And yet, he drew it for 5 years. Our family's life has always been about place and design. My wife, Lena, is a landscape architect. She shapes the earth into spaces of beauty and function. Our home is a testament to order, filled with architectural plants, framed topographical maps, and design books. In this environment, our son, Sam, grew up. And ever since he could hold a crayon, he has been drawing a single-place dot. It started. At age 3, it was just scribbles then. A circle he called the square. A winding line he called the creek. A box that was the store. We thought it was cute. "Look, Alex," Lena would say, "he's building his own world." But as the years went on, his world became frighteningly specific. The vague shapes gained detail. The box for the store became Hemlock's General Store, with a porch and a bench out front. The creek gained a wooden truss bridge. A church appeared, with a distinct, pointed steeple and a slate roof. Streets emerged, given names: Mill Street, Willow Lane. Individual houses took form, each one slightly different. He didn't call it his imaginary world. He called it my before home. When he was 6, in an exercise of paternal indulgence and professional curiosity, I began to digitize his maps. I tried to map them in GI software, trying to find the internal logic. The consistency was unnerving. The scale was nearly perfect. The spatial relationship between the mill, the creek, and the bridge was functional. It was a place that could exist. I told Lena it was a paracosm, a detailed fantasy world that bright children sometimes create. It was a clinical, comfortable explanation. It was a lie. The moment that comfort shattered into a million pieces of fear arrived in the summer Sam turned 7. He was at his desk, working on his most detailed masterpiece yet, a large map he'd been adding to for months. I was watching over his shoulder when he picked up a blue crayon. With broad, violent strokes, he began to scribble over everything, over the houses, the church, the store. He covered his entire world in blue. "Sam, what are you doing?" Lena asked, her voice full of alarm. Sam didn't look up. His voice was flat. The voice of a newscaster reporting a disaster. "The water is coming," he said. "Sheriff Brody said everyone has to leave. The big wall isn't going to hold." Suddenly, it was no longer a map of a place. It was the map of an event. Of an ending. From that day on, the story behind the map began to leak out. Sam talked about it with a strange, dispassionate sadness. He spoke of the shaking ground and the booming in the hills. He described scenes of people packing wagons, of neighbors saying goodbye in the square. He spoke of people. Old Man Hemlock, who owned the mill and smelled of pine and sawdust. Gable, the schoolteacher who gave him apples. And Sheriff Brody, a tall man who tried to keep everyone calm, even though his own eyes were scared. My professional obsession turned into a desperate quest. I needed to prove it real, or prove it false, to save my own sanity. I spent my nights poring over old topographical surveys of our region, comparing the geographical features. I was looking for a combination of features: a valley nestled between 2 rounded hills, a creek that made a sharp southern bend before meeting a larger river. It was a distinct configuration. I found nothing. The clue came from an unexpected place. A colleague at the university was researching the effects of New Deal infrastructure projects. He showed me a planning map from 1934 for the construction of the Rosedale Dam, a massive project a 3 hours drive north of us, which created the vast Rosedale Lake. The map showed the topography of the area before it was flooded, and there it was. My heart hammered against my ribs. A valley, 2 rounded hills, a creek that made a sharp southern bend. On the old government map, the valley was labeled Silas Valley. Several small dots indicated structures. It was my son's place. That night, with trembling hands, I used my cartography software to create an overlay. I projected Sam's most detailed map on top of a 1934 survey. The match took my breath away. Sam's church was exactly where the old map showed a small cross symbol. His truss bridge crossed the creek at precisely the same point as the Silas Creek Bridge on the old map. Hemlock's general store stood where a small square indicated a commercial building. It was a perfect match. A ghost on paper laid over a bone of a map. The big wall, I said to Lena, my voice hoarse. The dam. The water coming. Lena, they flooded his town. There was no more debate. There were no more theories. There was only a terrible truth and the need to go. The investigation was no longer about proving or disproving. It was about paying respects. It was a pilgrimage to a town's grave. The drive to Rosedale Lake was silent. The air in our car was heavy with unspoken questions. The lake itself was beautiful, a vast blue mirror surrounded by green hills, popular with boaters and fishermen, a place of recreation and beauty that hid an entire town in its dark belly. There was a historic drought that year. The local news was full of stories about the dangerously low water levels. When we arrived, the shoreline had receded hundreds of feet, revealing a wide band of cracked red mud. An ugly, ghostly landscape. We walked along the new water's edge, the ground soft beneath our feet. Sam was quiet, his eyes scanning the vast expanse of water with a solemnity that didn't belong to a child. It was Lena who saw it first. "Alex, what is that?" She was pointing at some square-cut stones jutting from the mud. Foundations. The stone foundations of a house. Further on, we saw a rusted metal girder, what was left of a bridge. We were walking the streets of Silas Creek, and then we saw, about 30 yards from the shore, sticking out of the clear blue water, was the top of a church steeple, covered in green algae and moss, but unmistakable. It was pointed with a steep slate roof. It was Sam's steeple. The air stood still. The sound of birds and wind disappeared. All I could hear was the blood pounding in my ears. Sam's town wasn't lost. It was just sleeping. And the drought was waking it up. Sam, who had been silent the whole time, walked to the water's edge. He didn't look surprised or shocked. There was a deep, ancient sadness on his face. He lifted his arm and pointed to the steeple, piercing the surface of the lake. "That's my bell tower," he said, his voice soft, but clear above the lapping of the water. "I used to climb it to see the whole valley." He looked at me, his eyes holding a lifetime of memories. The water came so fast at the end. In that moment, my world of lines and certainties shattered forever. A map was a promise that a place exists here and now. My son's map wasn't about the present. It was a testimony, a paper headstone. He wasn't drawing a place. He was drawing a memory of what it's like to lose one. We came home changed. The drought broke that fall, and the rains came, filling the lake back to its normal levels. The steeple, the foundations, the bones of Silas Creek, they all sank once more beneath the calm, blue water, back to their slumber. Sam stopped drawing the map. It was as if, having shown us it was real, his work was done. The town was honored, the story told. He started drawing other things: cars, animals, superheroes. He became a 7-year-old boy again, but the maps are still there, stored in a box in his closet. Sometimes, late at night, I take them out. I spread them across my office floor, the creations of a master cartographer who happens to be my son. I trace the streets with my finger, say the names of the people in a whisper. Last week, Sam brought me a new drawing. It was a portrait, startlingly detailed, of a man with a kind but weary face, wearing a hat and a 7-pointed star badge. "Who's this, buddy?" I asked. He shrugged, as if it were obvious. "It's Sheriff Brody," he said. "He made sure everyone got out in time." And I realized my son wasn't just the keeper of a lost place. He was the keeper of its people. His brain wasn't. Paracosm. It was an archive. And as I stared at the face of the sheriff, a man who died long before I was born, I could only wonder, how many other people are waiting inside him? How many other ghosts are patiently waiting for their stories to be drawn, for their lost homes to be remembered?